Deepika, welcome to Radio Panipuri.
Thank you so much, Pramila. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Deepika, first of all, many congratulations about the new book which has come up, and especially about this book which is Shambhala Junction. Viewers, listeners who are watching this or listening to this program, you must have made a travel trip, right? By train, by air, by bus. What did you all gain? A lot. Delays, fun, kids, family. Here's a special journey which Deepika has taken with her book Shambhala Junction. Deepika, can you please tell us what the book is and how did this journey begin with you?
Yes, actually, this journey begins with a train journey taken by Iris. She's a young Indian American woman, and like many Indian American women, she has relatives in India, so she's traveling to them with her fiance. And she gets off at a station which is titled Shambhala Junction, and the train takes off without her. Kind of a Jab We Met situation, but without the romance right then. And so she gets rescued by a stall holder, Aman, and Maitri, who is a Buddhist nun, and they take her home, and she gets kind of caught up in this child trafficking ring. Because what happens is that Aman's daughter is missing, and the daughter is a baby, and they can't find her. So there is a chase that involves Buddhist nuns, child rights activists, and through it all, it's the story of Iris, who is really trying to find herself rather than more than anything else. And it's an exciting chase throughout Shambhala Junction and other parts of India as well. And ultimately, you'll have to read the book to find out.
Very interesting. So, Deepika, does this station Shambhala Junction actually exist?
I'm so glad you asked me this, because I think as Indians, we all sort of grow up with the magic of a train journey, Hannah? Since we were young, especially for me, growing up in New Delhi, we used to go to Calcutta, and we would usually take these 24-hour train journeys to get to our nani and, mama and all that. So for me, there's a magic in train journeys. Now, I was kind of mining a lot of those kind of memories. What makes Iris get off this train in the first instance is that she sees a doll seller. Aman is a doll seller. And I don't know whether you've had the same, reaction before, but a long time ago, I remember as a little girl, when we would stop at Mughal Sarai, there would be like these wooden dolls everywhere, and we would buy them, and they were just really very cheap little things, but they were just very beautiful to a very young person. So I remembered those dolls, and Iris in my story sees this doll seller selling these beautiful dolls. Some of them are warrior dolls, some of them are dancing dolls, and she gets off. So I mined this story, and unfortunately, I think in today's railway stations, and I just recently, in fact, three months ago, I was going from Delhi to Kanpur on the train as well, and there really are not these artisans. Yeah, there are not like these, handicrafts people and all that selling things anymore. You get a lot of food, like, you get the chaiwalas and you get the coffee and things. But there just is not these handicraft people, left anymore on this train station. So I was happy I was able to mine this memory. So it's not a real train station, no, but it is very much mined from my childhood experiences as well as from some of my memories as a young adult.
I'm sure anyone who's going to read the book will also reminisce what their childhood was, and maybe there is an Iris in all of us. Deepika, going beyond, I know most of your stories have dealt with a big list of serious issues and causes, and I do understand Shambhala Junction also contains something which you want to tell the world, which is camouflaged within Iris. Can you share that with us?
Yes, there are a couple of things that I bring up out here. One is Aman, the doll seller, actually abandons his daughter. And one of the reasons he abandons her is because she is the third daughter born into a fairly poor family. So through this storyline, I'm also looking at issues of like gender discrimination, things like female feticide, how little the girl child is really wanted in many parts of our country, even now. And this really cuts across socioeconomic lines. So I'm not just saying that this is something that will, become okay very soon. I think it's something that we as women, especially as modern Indian women who have a voice, need to, do something about. So in this story, it's not really just Iris who sort of helps rescue the child, but there is also a child rights activist whose name is Lakshmi Mittal, of all things. And she goes and, she fights for the child in various ways. There are the Buddhist nuns who are actually, teaching in schools and helping women in various ways. So this is as much a story about women trying to help themselves and finding a way out of the patriarchal systems that that we are sort of entrenched in and used to, really. That some of these things I would like people to question. There is also the theme, of course, of international adoptions, and when you have foreign parents from the U.S. especially willing to pay, let's say, $35,000 to $40,000 for a child. It opens up a market, and it's not only in India, it's also in places like Guatemala, where they've actually had armed gangs going into homes and kidnapping children. They've had a problem in China with that, and unfortunately a lot of it has been sort of also made worse by people like Brangelina and Madonna, because they're looking for these rainbow families from all over the world, and so the problem just keeps going from one place to another. And as soon as one government sort of clamps down, like Russian government did and the Chinese government certainly has, it just moves to another poorer place, because there are still a lot of people who are poorer than the rich Western buyer. So as soon as you're throwing that kind of money into a community, you will have people doing extreme things to give you what you want to buy. So it's a problem, yeah.
Thank you, Deepika, for calling all of these serious issues. And yes, we tend to sometimes ignore this. Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt is not reality. Not every kid gets that house there. But dear listeners and viewers who are watching this or listening to the program, do read this book, Shambhala Junction. You may have seen this. And Deepika, can I say that it is possible a Shambhala Junction can exist here in the US or any part or any country in the world?
Yes, absolutely. Like, one of the things, I did a lot of research on this, and I think this is also a book that actually has been getting some sort of controversy associated with it, but I have not really gone for, I'm just going to go on the book tour from from next month. So I still haven't really faced live audiences. But one of the things that is happening in Western countries is that a lot of these adoption agencies are fueled by churches. Okay, so there's a kind of a messianic zeal behind it. And there is, I have read a lot of media stories on this, as well as looked at peer-reviewed journals on this. And, there are very weird things like, kidnapping for Christ sort of, going on. So a lot of these people very often feel that if you save a child from a pagan place on earth, and you bring the child to a Christian country, then you are also, in a sense, saving their souls, So there is also a little bit of that going on, which is, again, very hard to talk about, in mainstream Christian communities. So if you look at sort of what is going on in America, what is really interesting is that, of course, you have black children, or rather African-American children, for sale. Not for sale. Sorry, let me take that back. You have African children, American children who are put up for adoption, but the demand for them out here is kind of 1/3 that of a white child. So often, like, American parents, apparently, from this story that I read on NPR, and NPR has done a series of adoption stories, parents are very often willing to go to Africa to adopt a child than to, let's say, go to the south side of Chicago. So that is also a very real problem. And I think that, the American community, the adoption community in America especially, needs to look into things like that as well as the Western communities all over the world, really, in terms of what is actually going on and why these children are being brought into different countries. And very often they're not orphans. That's one of the things that I'm highlighting in this book, that the family wants her back, but because there's a willing buyer who's willing to pay a lot of money for the child is essentially going to get torn from her roots and be brought somewhere else. And I've had people saying that, like, considering how children, especially poor children, are so destitute and, the hardships they have to face and things, it's so, like, maybe being adopted is not a bad thing. But if you really think about the rights of the child, the child can't say whether they want to be with their parents or with a complete stranger in a completely new environment. So what you're essentially doing is you're taking away the child's right to be with his or her own natal family within a loving system with blood relatives, and just tearing them away because somebody else has the means to buy them, So I think that this is a serious problem, which may not be as serious in terms of, like, how children die in carpet factories and things like that, but it's still serious. It's not something that's not real.
Deepika, I think I think if you talk about it, this is going to be a can of worms, which our discussions can be unending, and our listeners, our viewers definitely want to learn more. So yes, without further ado, can you let us know where else can we buy this book and where else it is available? What are your upcoming plans in letting the world know about this book too?
Right. This book was actually launched at the Richmond Literary Festival in London because it won the 2016 Virginia Prize for Fiction in the UK, and it was published in London. So it has had a launch, a very nice launch in Richmond, which is the birthplace of Virginia Woolf. I'm sorry, I'm not sure whether it's a birthplace, but she lived there, and her Hogarth Press and the Bloomsbury Group and everybody, they were in Richmond, so it's got a long history with Virginia Woolf. After that, what I've done is I came back to America, and this book was just launched in the United States on April 12th. So it's a very new kind of book here. It should be available in, like, Barnes and Nobles, and it's available on Target, of all things. I checked tonight. I saw that it was also being sold in Target. So it is available. I have distributors, who are sending it all over the world. And I plan to go on a book tour from May, and the Indian High Commission in Kuala Lumpur is hosting a book launch for Malaysia in their Netaji Subhash Chandra Center. So that will be sort of my first foreign launch after the London one. And then I have a series of festivals. I'm going to be at Ubud in Bali this year. I'm going to be in Singapore Writers Festival. And so, there's going to be a whole bunch of them. And I'll also be at Oklahoma for the World Literature Today Festival this year, as well as probably Atlanta. And I'm excited.
Well, I think Radio Pani Puri listeners and viewers are very excited because they have a chance to meet you anywhere in the world.